Hello, listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of The Cult Vault. We are continuing our coverage of multi-level marketing this week and looking into how groups extort things like faith and religion to push their own agenda. To bring us this information, I had help from Chelsea. Here she is telling us her story. Hi Chelsea, and thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to be continuing our coverage of multi-level marketing, and you have come here today to tell us about your experiences in this world. So would you like to start by introducing yourself to the listeners?
Yes, hi. Thank you, Casey, so much for having me. I'm Chelsea. I'm 29 years old. I am from the United States. I live out in the Midwest.
And for those people who aren't sure, what is multi-level marketing?
It's like a business structure that it kind of leans on unsalaried persons to market and sell products on a commission, and then they go and recruit others to their team, and then you can make commission off of what those people on your team make or what they sell. It's kind of controversial because there are illegal MLMs or pyramid schemes, we'll call them, that will pay people to recruit. Amway in particular is not considered a pyramid scheme just because you only get paid on products sold. However, in order to actually make enough money to support yourself or to leave your job, which is a lot of people's goals who get into it, it's practically impossible to just sell product alone. So you do have to recruit people. And even though you're making money on the product sold, you are reliant on getting other people into your team, which is kind of where the controversy comes with this quote unquote business structure.
Okay, so if you wanted to sell the product as a hobby and kind of make maybe pocket money, pocket change, you could stick to doing that. But if it's your long-term goal to make this sort of your line of employment, then that's where it's set up, where you would have to recruit people to make those commissions. So it's almost setting you up to force you to do that in some way.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I
okay.
don't know if I have ever met somebody who just sells product.
Yeah, because from the person I spoke to, I've done another episode with a woman called Roberta Blevins, who's quite an outspoken anti-MLM advocate. MLM standing for multi-level marketing. She said that it's hours and hours of work you have to put into it to initially start selling the product successfully anyway. So I can't imagine anybody would want to do that to make some pocket change in the same way that you could probably go and deliver takeaways to people's houses for the same amount of pocket change and pocket money without recruiting people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And the kind of awful thing about it is when you're first introduced to the opportunity, they will tell you that if you just want to make pocket money or you just want to sell and not build a team, you can absolutely do that. But then once you're in, they don't really teach you how to do that. And they always are pushing towards building a team. And then the conversation and the narrative becomes, well, you could have just gotten another job. You might as well work to become financially independent.
Right.
So it's really not like, even though they set it up in the beginning that you can do that, that's never really anything what people are working towards when they actually become an independent business owner.
Okay. And which MLM specifically were you a part of? Is that the Amway that you mentioned?
Yes. I was part of Amway, and in Amway, they have different branches called professional development programs, like Brit Worldwide Dream Builders, LTD. And you don't have to be a part of one of these, but they highly suggest it because they say you're more likely to make money. How true that is, I don't know. When you're in business, they call them like the system that you're affiliated with. And so basically these branches have their own best practices of how to recruit people and how to sell. They also have their own tools. They're called tools, which are different books that you read or podcasts. They call them audios. And these are just recordings that they take of conferences that you can listen to. And it's supposed to give you this mindset, they say, of being a business owner and keeping your motivation up.
Okay.
And then these are formed when someone gets to the point of where they have a big enough team that they can branch off and have this professional development program. I don't know the exact number of people you have to have. I think I'm guessing somewhere between like 5,000 to 10,000 people.
Whoa, okay.
It's enough of when their business is solid enough that they will always stay at this level. It's typically like a double diamond, they call it, or, just someone that has built a very successful business.
Right. And when you talk about selling products, what is it specifically that Amway sells to the public?
Oh my gosh, so many things. They have their own makeup line called Artistry. They have their own supplements line, Neutralite. They have sports nutrition. Also like energy drinks. They even sell home goods. They sell water filtration systems. They even sell like fertilizer. They're also associated with different companies like Disney and Best Buy and Omaha Steaks even. That's just over in the US. Omaha Steaks is like you can get steaks delivered to your door, and Best Buy is an electronics company. And so when you are a part of Amway for these other companies, you can get discounts if you go through your website. But the interesting thing about that too is when they're presenting you with this opportunity, they focus more on the companies that are associated with Amway rather than Amway itself. They make it seem like you're going to be getting discounts off of all of these other businesses and you can make money that way. But then once you're in, it's, well, no, you make more money off of these exclusives that Amway has. And with that, as true to multi-level marketing products, they're much more expensive. And truthfully, they're really not any better than what you can get at the store.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, if I was to go out and purchase something, like say I was going to purchase a water filtration system, would I know that it came from Amway, or is it going to have a name that might be associated with something that I wouldn't directly link to Amway?
It has a different name on it.
Yeah, because the makeup line you mentioned, that doesn't sound anything like Amway. No,
and it says Artistry on there, but then at the bottom of the package in small lettering it says Amway. But if you just saw, the lipstick or the blush in the packaging, you wouldn't know.
Interesting indeed. It makes me wonder how many people have products from this company and maybe don't realize. So how and when did you join this particular MLM?
It was in 2015, around the beginning of 2015. And it was through kind of a friend from high school. They spoke to my sister first, and she was not interested. She had actually graduated with this person, and I had graduated with their younger sister. And so my sister referred her to me because at the time I was in a very vulnerable place. I was so desperate to get out of my job, and I was looking for basically anything that I could to get out of what I was currently doing. And for a really long time, I kept saying I wanted to just do something that helps people, but I didn't know what that was. And so when she talked to me about it, that was kind of the basis of what they say that they're doing. Like, they're giving people an opportunity to have this income outside of their job, or even quit their job entirely. It's also presented as a 2 to 4 year plan that you could be completely financially independent in 2 to 4 years if you follow the business plan. And so that was like a hook, line, and sinker for me, because it checked all of the boxes. I had never had any negative experiences with MLMs. I had no idea how predatory they were. And my parents were very supportive of me when I told them about it, because they had used Amway products in the past. They had friends that did it, but it was just on the side. So they hadn't really experienced any of the negativity of it. And so I was like, great, this sounds like a really great opportunity. I get to help people. And I get to, in potentially 2 years, I could leave my job and not have to worry about ever going back to work.
Yeah.
And even in like high school and college, it was kind of difficult for me to make friends. And then all of a sudden there's this group of seemingly successful people that were highly respected, and they kept saying how awesome I was. And, they were all such positive people. And it was like you had these instant friends, and everybody was so close, and it felt like I belonged somewhere for the first time so quickly.
Okay. Interesting. And you mentioned kind of being in a vulnerable place when your sister's friend got in touch with you. Was she messaging you over social media?
She ended up calling me. And then after she talked to me and very vaguely told me what it was, that it was this e-commerce business, that they worked with companies online to build up their online presence. After that, when I said, yeah, I was still interested, then we met on a Google Hangouts, and she showed me their business plan that was what talked about, this is how much money you could be making in 6 months. This is how much money you could be making in 2 to 4 years. These are the only things that you need to do are be like coachable and ambitious, and just very high level of everything. And then when I said, yes, I was still interested in that, then I went to a team meeting that was at a hotel, and they had somebody that was in business kind of talk about Amway, but they don't mention it until the meeting is about an hour, and they don't even mention the name Amway until probably 45 minutes in. And even when you're talking about it and recruiting other people, they tell you try not to say the word Amway, because people have negative connotations with it, and you don't want them to completely shut off the opportunity because they hear the term Amway.
Okay. And there's obviously a reason why there's negative kind of connotations to that word and that company.
Yes.
Which I'm sure we'll get into as we go through. So the only reason I asked whether your sister's friend got in touch with you over social media is because I know that I have a lot of people on my friends list who join up to what seem to be MLMs, and will invite me to private Facebook groups where they're selling clothes or makeup, or even like candles or scents, or even candies and sweets and things as well. All sorts of private groups that run tombolas and special offers, and join this group in the next 2 hours and you could get this free product. So I know that a lot of the stuff that comes with MLM territory happens on social media. So that's really why I asked that question, just kind of fishing around to see whether that's how she got in touch with you. And obviously there is a bonus for her to get you involved, because then you're recruited, you work in her team then?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's the incentive for her to reach out and get in touch with people.
Correct. Yes, because whatever products I would sell, she would get a commission off of that too. It wouldn't be taken from me, but depending on how much I sell, they get a piece of the pie of that.
Right. And when you are first introduced to this, are you told that there is an upfront expense that you are supposed to foot to get your first kind of load of products or workshops, or how does it work?
Yes, so there is an upfront cost of just starting up your business. You can also buy the welcome kit. It's not required, but again, it's one of those that they highly encourage you to get so that you can get samples of product, but also because you're buying product, the person that sponsors you gets a piece of that because they do not get commission off of just recruiting you. So if you sign up, they don't get anything for that. So if you can convince somebody to get the welcome kit, then you automatically get a bonus there.
Okay. Interesting. It's kind of feel the exploitation kind of come creeping in.
Yes.
Especially when you've been there and bought the welcome pack and received the welcome pack and lined someone else's pockets, and then you're kind of getting in touch like, oh, absolutely get the welcome pack. It's essential.
Yes. And when you're new and you don't know this, it just seems like because they're framing it up, we just want to help people. We want to, help people become financially independent. You don't think of it that way as their main goal is to make money. And you think that it's just they're trying to help your business start off well, but really there's a more of an incentive for them.
Okay, so do you remember what the price of the welcome pack is and what the price was to get your business started?
I want to say for both it was around $200.
Okay,
I think $250.
Not too extortionate.
Correct. Yeah. It wasn't too bad. And that was my thought was, oh, I can start a business for $250. At the time, it was like, that's what I spend on shoes in a month. So why not start a business? And if it ends up being awful, I can always just leave, thinking it was that easy to leave.
What is included in both of those things? Like, how is it pitched to you that you will run your business? Like, do you have a building to work in? Like, how does all of that work? What's the name of the business? How do you register?
It's all online. Everything's online. There's no brick and mortar store. And that's part of the pull of it is, the thing that they say is you can run a business off of your smartphone. Okay. You can do it anywhere at any time. You can make your own hours. You get a website that's already created. You can set it up in certain ways. You can't really change it too much, but if you want to focus more on the sports nutrition, you could show that as the first thing that you see on the screen, or as far as makeup, because they tell you, it's your business. You can make it however you want it to be,
within these limitations.
Correct. Because that was my thought too. I was like, well, but if it's my own business, then I would get to choose the products, but okay, whatever, you guys, this more than I do. And so you get access to the website. And then in the welcome kit, there's different booklets with all of the different products, and then samples of several of the products too, as well as catalogs that you can give out to friends or family or whomever.
Okay, and how are you supposed to? What do you name your business?
You can pick whatever you want.
It doesn't have to have Amway included in the title or anything. It can just be like Chelsea's makeup store.
Yes, and they encourage you to not include Amway in there at all because it is your quote unquote business.
That's so interesting because the last person I spoke to, she was in LuLaRoe, and she was like, you had to call it like LuLaRoe Casey or LuLaRoe Chelsea. Like, that's so interesting, the difference there.
Yeah.
Okay, so once you paid your $250 and you received everything and you got started, sort of what did your average day and week look like? How did you start to build your kind of your own business?
So I was it I don't think that I was ever fully invested in it once I realized how much selling was included, because I didn't like sales, and I was always uncomfortable talking to people about buying anything or joining my team.
Right.
And they would just talk about how you're offering an opportunity or just being helpful by giving suggestions, whether it's, a supplement. If somebody says, they don't have any energy, well, hey, I've got this supplement that can help with that. Or, oh, you're looking for a mascara, I sell this really great mascara, things like that. Or just have the mindset that you're going out to make friends. And when you make these new friends, you might offer the opportunity to them later. So the major draw for me was just being associated with people who were regarded as the highly successful and highly respected. But as time went on, I did start to do the things that they suggested, which would be contacting people via Facebook. So like you had mentioned previously, social media is a very big way that people recruit. So you would go and just kind of spark up a conversation with somebody, and maybe you would ask them right away, or if you hadn't talked to them in a while, just kind of start up a conversation to break the ice a little bit. And then maybe a week later, come back and say, hey, I've started working with these business people who are expanding their network and looking for ambitious people who are looking for an opportunity outside of work to diversify their income. And so that would kind of be like the basis of that message. And they would say to contact, maybe 3 people every day, read a book for 30 minutes. They had different books that they would recommend, whether it be just a leadership book or a self-help book or personality book, listening to one of the podcasts that they have. We would also have a weekly meeting with people that were in your local area, and they could be from different teams. And that's where everybody would kind of get together. And then if you had offered the business opportunity to somebody, that's where they would then go to have the plan pitched to them, in that step that I had mentioned about going in to this hour-long meeting, where in the last 15 minutes they finally talk about, it's Amway and this is how you build a team. And then every other month we would have a meeting with my specific team, some of our uplines that were in the area, but it would just be with our specific team, not with anyone else from other teams, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you pay your $250 and still don't know that it's Amway at that point.
You do know that it's Amway, but it's still very vague about what exactly am I doing? What does the day-to-day look like? Because they say, it's your business, so you can do whatever you want. You just, contacting people to offer the opportunity, or you're listening to a podcast, or you're reading a book, or you're going out and networking with other people. But it is all very vague. You kind of skim through the contract that you're signing rather quickly, which was very naive on my part to do that. I was, young at the time, so didn't really know too much about contracts and things like that. And unfortunately, in my situation, I trusted the people that sponsored me, that recruited me. So I trusted what they said and figured, they've been in for 5 years and they seem to be doing well. So yeah. What do I have to lose?
Okay. And how did things kind of continue? How did things build and develop? I know that some people can make loads of money when they first start in these types of schemes. Is that something that you experienced?
In the beginning, I did earn back what I had invested rather quickly, but after that, no. there's so much money that you have to, they say, invest in the business, that they don't really tell you about at first, because it's always framed as you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. You can decide what you want to do. It's your business. You don't have to go to the meetings. You don't have to, if you don't want to sell a whole bunch of product, you don't have to. You could just build a team, or you don't even have to build a team. You can just sell product. So it's all kind of very vague. But once you're in, you realize, okay, there's this weekly meeting that's $5 every time you go. Then you have this meeting every other month that if you want to go to, they call it a night owl, which is a meeting after the meeting, and it will go until like 1 or 2 a.m. on a weekday, and you have to pay for that. And they always frame it as, the night owl, that's where you really learn about the business, because it's much smaller and you get to hear from people who are really successful, and you'll really want to hear from them. So then you have to pay extra for that. And then there's conferences 3 to 5 times a year that are $125 to just go to the conference, not including your food, not including your travel, not including your hotel room. And then the books that you have to buy and the podcasts you have to buy. And I say have to, because even though they tell you you don't have to do it, it's always framed as, well, you don't have to, but nobody who's successful hasn't done these things. So you can choose not to, but it's better for you if you do, but it's completely up to you. So it's manipulated that way, as in it's your choice, but it's really not your choice.
And did you find yourself kind of enrolling and signing up to all of these things that are recommended you attend?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I didn't want to fail at it. And I was like, even though I don't have the motivation yet to really go after it and talk to people, maybe if I continue doing all of these things, I will, because I'll continue to hear from people, and I'll build that motivation and really start believing that I could do this, that I could be successful, and I could be one of those few people that makes it. And I say few because there is rarely anybody that makes money in it statistically. I had looked up some statistics about it, and on average, the yearly earning for any independent business owner is $2,400 for the entire year. And that's just saying what they earned, not what they actually profit. And over half of all of the active IBOs, independent business owners, don't earn any commission at all. And even the Federal Trade Commission stated that at the platinum level, which is, it's just kind of the first big level that you get to, which for most people takes several years to get to. That's when you can really start to make a profit from your earnings. So up until that point, it seems as though nobody's actually making profit. They might be earning money, but all of it's then being put back into the business because of all of these extra expenses that you have.
Right. Okay. And how are you supposed to buy all these once you sold your products? Are you supposed to pay to replace them?
So as far as, we don't have to have an inventory. You didn't have to have an inventory because everything was online, but they tell you to replace all of the products that you have in your home with Amway products.
Right.
And you are very much shamed for not. So if you're using a MAC lipstick instead of your artistry lipstick, it's frowned upon. But again, like everything is very expensive. The quality is not any better. So
okay.
You're kind of guilted into replacing everything that you have with Amway products. But fortunately, you don't have to keep an inventory.
And you the person that recruited you, do you know how many people she had actually managed to recruit? Sort of how big her little, I don't know how to word it, her tree, how much she'd built her tree up?
Yeah, so it was her and her husband, and I think they had about 30 people when I joined. I don't know what it looks like now, but they had about 30 people, and they were not at that platinum level yet.
Right. Okay.
So, and they had been in for 5 years.
Okay. Interesting. And this is always a tough question to ask people, but did you ever go and recruit anybody yourself?
I had one person, and then they left about a week later.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How was that to reach out to people and ask them if they'd like to be involved?
It was awkward. It was extremely awkward. I always felt terrible about it because I didn't want anybody to think that I was trying to use them or exploit them in any way. Because I still didn't realize that it was a scam, and what I was doing was preying on people. And but I always had this very just uncomfortable feeling about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I truly hated it, which is why I only ever had one person, because I didn't want to be that person that only reached out to somebody because I was trying to get them in business.
Yeah, it's always an awkward one, that, isn't it? To kind of be like, once you leave, do you feel obliged to then have a conversation with that person about them? They should leave as well, or it's always a tough one to know what to do there. But you mentioned
Yes.
in some of your writing to me that there was a religious aspect that played a part on your time within this MLM.
Yes. Yes. So to give a little bit of background on that, Amway is, I guess you could consider, a Christian business. The founders of it built it on Christian principles, but they don't talk about it outright that they have this Christian affiliation, because they really don't want to discourage anyone who isn't Christian to join. It's not like they have this stigma against anyone of any other religion, or no religion at all. It was really for anybody to join. So it wasn't like you have to be Christian in order to be in this. So they didn't right away say that it was. They kind of didn't really want anybody to talk about it either. But they would sometimes allude to it during conferences on the Friday and Saturday. So conferences would be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And sometimes on Friday and Saturdays, they would allude to it, but it was typically left for Sunday, because on Sundays, they would always have a church service for anyone who wanted to go. It was completely optional. You did not have to go at all. They never forced anybody to do it, but it was there. And it started, they started doing that because, or so we're told, they started doing that because when Amway first started and they had these conferences on the weekends, there was a lot of people that didn't want to miss out going to church. So they just decided to have their own church service, which is kind of strange to me because nobody there is a pastor or anything. So I'm not really sure how they were preaching, because they have no education really in it. But anyways, so they would talk about it on this, like the Sunday conferences, or also in those night owls, because typically if you went to a night owl, you had already been to a conference. But once they knew you were a Christian, though, then you were basically free game. And that's when they would start to manipulate you into thinking that you were there because it was God's plan for your life. And he called you there because it was your ministry, and this is how you were going to reach out to other people. And your business was really not about making money or being financially independent. It was mostly to get people to the Sunday morning service so that they could bring their life to Christ. And so if you left it, then ultimately you were running away from God's plan for you, and you lost your dream, or your dream wasn't big enough, and you were turning your back on God if you left because he had called you to be there. And then Sunday mornings, they would have someone higher up in business, usually whoever was having the conference. It would be somebody higher up, and they would be kind of the head of the whole conference, and they would be the one talking, or they would have just somebody else come and give their testimony. And then after that, they would have an altar call, and that is where they invite people to come up to accept Christ if they want to. And so after that, they would then tell people that, like, okay, now that you've accepted Christ, now the next thing that you need to do is go and find a really big church to be a part of, because if you go to a small churches are always looking for ambitious people that they can then volunteer for the church, and they can do all these things in the church, and you don't want to do that because Amway is your ministry and you don't want to have anything that can get in the way of that. So find a big church so you can go to it on Sunday, and then the rest of the week you can build your business, which is completely unbiblical. And the first time I heard them say this was about 10 months after I got into business. And had I heard it at the first conference, I would have immediately left. But by the time I heard it, I had already started to become manipulated and brainwashed. So at that time, I was clouded by, like, okay, this person is really successful. Everybody looks up to them. They're very intelligent. They know what they're talking about. Maybe I've just learned the wrong thing my whole life. And so it didn't hit me as hard when I heard it as it would have if I had heard it earlier on.
Right. So you were identified as a Christian at this time?
Yes.
Okay. So you're one of these people that you said is kind of like ripe for the picking in terms of being approached by somebody and told that you know you're supposed to use your Amway business to basically start your own ministry.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So it was like turning what's supposed to be a business into a church.
That's so interesting. They've got so much information control there, where they kind of don't tell you it's Amway, and then they kind of tell you it is Amway, but they don't want to scare you off. And then they're like, yes, we are actually Amway.
Yes.
And then months after that, they're like, hey, come to this Sunday thing. And then you go, and then they're like, oh, actually, we are Amway, but actually, we are, we're trying to recruit people and bring them to God.
Yes. Yes. And so, I mean, as a Christian person, at first, early on, when I found out that there were a lot of Christians in it, for me that was kind of a pull, because it's like, okay, there's a lot of people, we have the same beliefs, we have the same morals, this is really great. But then as you start to hear these other things, it started to get very sketchy about, okay, what is your definition of Christian, and what is your definition of what the Bible actually says, because so much of this is false. And no one questioned anything that these higher ups were saying, because everything always had to be positive. You couldn't say anything negative. It was toxic positivity all the time. And so when you've got 15,000 people around you all believing what this person is saying, it is so easy to think, okay, maybe my whole life I've just been been taught incorrectly, and they're actually right.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I could see easily how that could happen. We talked about it in a recent episode. I think it's the conformity experiment, almost, where everybody kind of, I think it's the Solomon Asch experiment, where he has a person in a room and he has 10 other people in a room, for example, and they're all in on the experiment, but one person isn't, and they're asked to pick the shortest straw or shortest piece of pasta, and everyone else picks the longest one, and he's like, and then he
Yes.
picks the longest one as well, because everybody else in the room has, and even though you can see that he knows that that's not the right answer, he's like, and then he reaches for the longest piece as well. So I just find that so interesting, and it's such a strong example of peer pressure or conformity when you're surrounded by a group of people that kind of maybe think differently to how you do.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, when you see that from the outside, when you see this experiment, you always think that would never be me. Of course, this one is the shortest piece of pasta. Of course, I would pick that one. But it's so different when you're in the middle of it, and you just being the one out of thousands. It's so
especially if you're having your faith
like
threatened as well, being told
Correct.
that, you know, if you don't do this, you're walking away from God's vision for you.
Yes. Yep.
That's kind of, I mean, and when you go to these Sunday sessions, what are you, is it like a King James Bible that you're using, or I mean, what is it a specific person's vision that you're following in these Sunday services? Because it's sounding very much like somebody is trying to build some kind of religious empire behind closed doors with very kind of limited information control.
Yes, well, and that's the thing too, is they wouldn't ever, I mean, sometimes they would have a Bible, but a lot of times it was somebody just talking about their testimony and like their life and how they came to Christ and things like that. But when it was the biggest conference of the year, and it was the head of our professional development system speaking, it could be whatever they decided to talk about. And a lot of times it was false teaching. And I had only gone to 2 of those because I was only in for a couple of years before I had enough. And it was always, I always felt very uncomfortable, but I couldn't figure out why, because I knew that it wasn't right what they were talking about, but I didn't have the references to know exactly what it was. But they would, the main view of Amway, as from like using like a Christian perspective, is they teach the prosperity gospel, which is highly controversial. For anyone that doesn't know what the prosperity gospel is, it's basically using the Bible to say that God says, if you are not healthy, if you're not wealthy, if you're not prospering, then you don't have enough faith. So if you're poor, if you're struggling, then you don't have enough faith in God to provide you the things that you need. And then also teaches that basically, if you have enough faith, then God will give you whatever you ask for. You know, they would say, you know, I have this big, beautiful house and all of these cars and all of these designer clothes because God wants me to have that, because I deserve that, because I asked God for it and I believe that he would give it to me, which is also, in my opinion of, you know, studying the Bible, it's a not correct.
It's I from all of the people I've spoken to that have been involved in Christian faiths, it's very much about modest living.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, and also, I mean, Jesus was a poor carpenter, so that was always the thing that I thought about, because I didn't know too much about the prosperity gospel when I started. Like, I hadn't researched it very much, but it always kind of sat with me that I was like, but Jesus was poor though. So it's not like, that doesn't mean that he didn't have enough faith, because, you know, he was Jesus. So yes, so there was a lot of that. At one point he had said that like on one of these Sunday mornings, that waterboarding wasn't torture, it was just a way to get information from people.
Right.
So that, I guess, not from like the Christian perspective, but just there was all of these things like this. I was like, this is the person that everybody is looking up to. What is happening? And that was said at the last big conference that I ever went to, because it's like, this is not this is not okay.
Yeah, that's very strange. And were you attending any other type of church services at this time, or did you devote all of your time to Amway?
No, I continued to go to my own church, because when they had said that about joining a big church, I I had only heard that a couple of times as well. Because the first time I heard it, I was like, maybe they didn't mean it the way that they said it. And then when I heard it again, it was kind of like, this is not okay, because from a true from a true biblical perspective, the point of church is to build community with other people. It's to build a community within the church, and then to then take that and build and go out into the surrounding community. And that's, where the money that goes to the church, that's what that goes to. So you're supposed to be an active part of your church.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they said, like, join a large church because you don't want to get too involved, that was that was one of the major things that didn't sit well with me.
And did you have any other friends or family that joined Amway at any point whilst you were involved?
Um, besides the woman that got me in, not really. They had recruited some other people that I went to high school with, but I didn't really know them. But that made it harder to leave as well, too, just because I kind of knew them. We weren't really friends, but I had known them as really nice, very intelligent people. And so it was like, well, if they believe all of this, then it was just one more thing to make me think that I was wrong about my
Right.
views. But my parents had used products from MLMs while growing up, and I had never seen anything, again, like I had never seen anything negative about it. And they were very supportive when I joined. And so I just didn't, yeah, I didn't really have any good foundational basis for thinking that there was
Mm-hmm.
something bad with it.
Well, I suppose your parents' experience with them whilst you were growing up and your experience now is different because the internet has created sort of a new monster when it comes to
Yes.
MLMs and pyramid schemes. It's allowed this kind of ugly thing to kind of manifest into something that even I wouldn't have recognized from the Avon lady on my street when I was growing
Right.
up.
Right. Yes. And their experience was, Pampered Chef, which is kind of like Tupperware. I don't know if you have Pampered Chef in the UK, but it's just things for your kitchen, and people would come to your house and sell these things, or even just candles. There was one all about candles, but it would always be coming to your home, and you'd have this party, and it'd be a fun thing, and there'd be all this food, and just kind of, all these friends getting together, and maybe you buy something, maybe you don't, and there's games and things. So it was always, and I would attend those as well, so it was always a very positive experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, what it's like you said, what it's turned into is this whole different monster than it was in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, people are opening their online stores on Facebook and inviting people to
Mm-hmm.
come to their virtual store and look at all the products that they're selling on there and doing sort of, you know, buy one, get one free offers that only last for 5 hours. If you do it now and join me
Yes.
now and tell all your friends to sign up. And if you tell your friend to sign up, I'll give you a 20% discount code. And it's just, it's a completely different thing now than it was 10, 20 years ago.
Yep.
And you mentioned being involved in this for a couple of years before leaving. So did you ever leave your other job that you were having such a hard time with, or were you kind of having then to juggle both of these things at the same time?
I was doing both. I was doing both.
Okay.
Yeah. I definitely never broke even. I lost quite a lot of money doing it.
And
And
had to stay in this job that made you miserable at the
mhm,
same time.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
And
you've
I,
probably got a lot of pressure on your shoulders at the moment, towards your own happiness and well-being.
yes, yes, I did. And but again, like, I always rationalized it, because I was like, if I could just get motivated to do this, then everything would be different. But then at the same time, I had all of these friends in it, and so they would also talk about, if if you haven't figured out your motivation to do it, or if you haven't figured out your why, be here for just the association. Just be here for the people that you get to surround yourself with, because that alone is worth the investment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like any way that they could get you to stay in as long as possible. And then you find out it's because, well, the more products you buy, the more it benefits your upline. Because if I didn't sell a certain amount of product every month, even if I had people under me, I would not get any commission off of what they sell. So basically, I'm buying all of these things for myself, I'm selling to other people, and I'm getting a little bit of money off of that. But every time I buy something and every time somebody else sells something, I'm getting a tiny bit of money, but my upline is continuing to make money off of it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also so that you can bring money to your upline, but
Yes.
to recruit people for the church ministry side of it as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, in the church ministry, I think that's more of a, they think that's why they're doing it, but it's really not, because I don't believe that everybody in it, just like I didn't realize it was a scam. I think because it's so infiltrated that not everybody realizes it for what it really is. Obviously, until you get higher up and you realize, oh, I get to make money off of this, I get to make money off of that, because they would keep a lot of things secret about where the majority of your upline's income is coming from. They don't really talk about how every time you buy an audio, they get money for it. Or every time you subscribe to their, they have this app that you could communicate through, kind of like a WhatsApp type thing. You could share different videos and chat with other people within your team. Every time you subscribe to that, the upline gets money for it. Any books, they get money for it, but they don't, again, that's kind of on the hush hush. They don't really explain that, because then that means you have to get higher up in order to make that. And it would discourage people from coming in when they just want to make it seem like, oh yeah, all you have to do is buy products from yourself and teach other people to do the same. It sounds so easy. And then you think you're going to have this lifestyle, but you can only get that lifestyle if you get to this very specific point in business.
And have those uncomfortable experiences of trying to recruit people as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So what happened for you to finally leave? What does the process look like for somebody to kind of step down from Amway and say, I'm finished with this?
For me, I ended up not saying anything to anyone. I just kind of stopped going. Which was probably not the best choice, but I had witnessed so many other people leaving, and the things that would be said about those people after they left, that I didn't want to think about what was going to be said about me. And I was also afraid that I would get talked out of leaving, because they would do that as well. But when somebody would leave, they would say, oh, they just lost their dream, and, we still need people to serve us at restaurants and mow our lawns. And they just weren't ambitious enough. And it was just, it just made you feel kind of awful about it. Like that if somebody wanted anything else for their lives besides this, they had no idea what they were talking about. Like if somebody really enjoyed their job and just wanted to still work at their job, the people in Amway would think that they were crazy. That, why would you want to have a job? This is the greatest opportunity that you could ever have. And so then you start to feel that way too, of why would I want anything else? Why would I pursue anything else if this is the best lifestyle there is? Yeah. But before I left there, about a year before I actually stopped going to anything, there were different things that were kind of building up to that breaking point. One of them was when I had mentioned that the leader of our Amway team had said that waterboarding wasn't actually torture,
right?
Or when they would just continually misconstrue scripture, that kind of all built up to it. But the final breaking point, because up until then, everything I could kind of rationalize with, maybe I'm just wasn't, like I said, I wasn't taught this properly, or I must be missing something. Maybe I'm wrong. But the final tipping point was, at the end of the month, you want to have everything that you're selling for the month in, because then you have so many points, and then that will determine what your rank level is for that month, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the month, everybody's trying to get orders in and order all of their things. And so my upline called me and asked me, what I was going to put in. And I had very clearly said, well, I don't want to this month. I'm just going to wait until next month. Like, I don't really have the money right now to put anything in. And it's kind of really late. Like, today is the last day of the month. And I don't really want to reach out to a bunch of people right now and pressure them to buy anything. And then I was convinced that I needed to, because, whatever my goal was for that month, I should really try to strive and hit for that and don't cut myself short. And so hesitantly, I did. And then a few days later, we had a call with our immediate team, and my uplines were praised for having all of this product go through at the end of the month.
Right.
And then she said, and she was like, it was really crazy because we didn't really push anybody to do anything. We just helped them reach their own goals.
No,
but we didn't,
okay.
we didn't have to really force anything on anyone. And that's when I knew. I was like, that's an actual lie.
Yeah, that's
that is an actual
gaslighting, isn't it? In its
Yes,
true form, you're kind of sitting there like, hang on a minute, you were trying to tell me that you didn't pressure me into doing something, because I think I can remember that you did.
exactly. And so I was like, so this whole time they were really trying to just get their points in, and now they're turning around and making it seem like it was so simple. But she forced me to do it, and I was like,
Yeah.
there is no rationalizing out of this. That is an actual lie, and this is somebody that I trusted, and I'm done. And so after
Yeah.
that, I stopped going completely.
Well, I mean, that's probably the best time to have done it as well, because if it would have happened once or twice more, there's no saying whether you would have just become so desensitized or disassociated from people saying that to you, even though it's
Exactly.
not true, that you're kind of just like, yeah, I know you're forcing me, or you're kind of not forcing, but
It's just encouragement.
heavy-handedly encouraging me
Yes.
to do things, but you're saying that you're not encouraging me. But I've heard you say that a few times, so it's kind of whatever. But what you mentioned, the toxic positivity before as well. So you've got the love bombing aspect, because there's this group of people who have accepted you, and you finally feel like you're part of something, and you're being encouraged to stay, even if it means just being able to be around these people who obviously make you feel really good about yourself. Did that stop at any point and just become toxic positivity solely, or was there always an aspect of love bombing involved?
The toxic positivity was through the whole thing. I do keep in touch with a few people that I met in business that we're still friends, but for the most part, it's very clear that it's all shallow. Everyone's just super happy and positive because that's how they feel
Mm-hmm.
that they need to be, and you're only friends because you're in business together. But things would go as far as, like I said, you could not question anything upline said. You couldn't speak negatively, and negatively is even just, I disagree with what was said, or I didn't really like how they said it that way, because then somebody would come back and be like, well, they probably just meant it this way. Just, take what you can use for your business out of it and don't worry about anything else. And it would go as far as, I remember somebody speaking at one of the conferences about how they had cancer, and they did not tell anybody because they didn't want to hinder anybody else's business. This was verbatim. They didn't want to hinder anybody else's business and potentially harm anybody's success. So they kept it to themselves. They only told their immediate upline. And then we're like, and they made it seem like this was appropriate. And I mean, it's nobody's, if you don't want to tell anybody what's going on in your life, that's your own choice.
Yeah.
But to make it seem like you need to hide these major things that are happening to you so that you don't like potentially harm somebody's business is like saying that then these people aren't really your friends, because if they're really your friends, then they want to be there to help you through these things. And then they said, you know, don't be upset that I didn't tell you. I didn't want anybody to know. So don't feel bad that you didn't know about it, because I purposely didn't say anything to anyone. And that to me just, I struggled with that one a lot, just because I was like, well, if I'm kind of discouraged from having friends outside of business because they say that they won't understand what you're doing, and the people in business are supposed to be my closest friends, but I'm not supposed to tell them the major things that are happening in my life. Am I just supposed to suppress all these things? Because that's extremely unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And so what am I supposed to do when I'm going through a hard time? You can't just keep that to yourself.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And that's just another red flag, isn't it, amongst all of the other things that have kind of cropped up and been a little bit kind of okay, that to me doesn't sound 100% kind of on the right side of a moral compass. But what is your faith like now, and are you still in that awful job, or have you managed to kind of really turn things around?
So I am out of that job. I have been for a while. Fortunately, now the job that I have, I'm extremely happy. The team that I'm on is incredible. So yes, I'm in a very, very good place. And my faith is it's truly stronger than it's ever been. And fortunately for me, I was able to separate the truth of what the Bible says from the false teachings that the people in Amway spoke. It's like I said, it's very clear. They're taking something that's meant to be a business and trying to turn it into a church, which is like, church is not a business, and mixing those things is causing toxicity. But once I distanced myself, I could see it much more clearly, because obviously while I was in it, I could not make that distinction at all, that's what was going on. There was the small things that alluded to it, but I couldn't really see it for what it was until I stepped outside. And mm-hmm. It did take a long time. It was not easy at all to reprogram my brain to understand that it is a cult, and that I was actually brainwashed. And then to also forgive myself for that. Maybe not forgive myself, but to not be so hard on myself that I was brainwashed in these things, because I always wanted to think that I would be the person that couldn't happen to, but anyone and everybody is susceptible
mm-hmm, absolutely
to this happening.
Yeah.
But fortunately it did not affect my faith. It's kind of driven me to want to speak out more about it, so that other people are not deceived by it either, and get the wrong idea of what Christianity actually is.
Okay, brilliant. And I know some people they go from one MLM to another. Is that something that you experienced, or were you kind of like wise to it after your first round through Amway?
Oh yeah, Amway was the only one. I was so scarred by that experience, and even before I was completely aware of how toxic it was. Like I said, I was never comfortable selling to people, and that's what every MLM is selling to people. So that was kind of the initial reason why I would never want to go back into one, because I hadn't read up on a lot. I didn't know if all of them had the same kind of foundational beliefs, or this similar mindset. But I did not like the structure of it. And I had no desire to go into another one.
Okay. Interesting. Because I know I read that some people kind of go from one to another, hoping that they'll be able to get that life that's promised to you before you sign up to these kind of schemes. So
Yes, because a lot of them say, oh, we're different. We're different than all of the other ones. And yeah, I think I
we
was
have
just,
proof that it can be a success. Our business
yes,
model is flawless, and
exactly.
all
Even
those
though
kind
less
of,
than 1% of people even make it.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And when they do, it's kind of at the expense and exploitation of all the people underneath them.
yes.
So I guess my last question to you before I ask you if there's anything you think we've missed is, what advice do you have for others who have been in a similar position to you, or maybe even are in that position right now?
Truthfully, I would say just get out as quickly as you can, because um, I've been part of the anti-MLM Reddit subgroup to educate myself on other MLMs and to be able to speak out against them. And they truly are, they're all fundamentally the same. They're all the same, unfortunately. And the longer you're in it, the harder it is to leave. Um, and not even related, because a lot of my experience was more related on the religious end, but even with that taken out, they prey on vulnerable people. For me, like I said, I was in a very vulnerable place, and people go after that of finding people who are looking for something else. And
Mm-hmm.
typically they're people that they don't make a lot of money, and they're just looking for an opportunity to change something. But it's extremely difficult to make money in any of them. If you look at the statistics of any MLM, barely anybody makes enough to even break even. And the ability to get as high as the higher ups have made it, it's so few and far between. And even in my experience, there were people that did make those higher levels, but they cheated their way to doing it. And that's like on the hush. Hardly any, no one talks about it, because nobody wants anybody to know that, this person actually cheated their way up. They just want you to think that if you follow this plan, it's going to work.
Yeah.
When nobody has made it that high following the plan. It doesn't work. They don't work. It's just best to not even get involved, because the people that you see who are successful online, they're like, there's just so few of them, and they make it seem like anybody can do it, but not everybody can do it.
Okay.
And there's just better ways of making money.
So basically just steer clear of them, and as good as they sound, they're too good to be true.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. And is there anything you think we've missed, Chelsea, that we should go over?
I can't think of anything.
I think we've managed to cover quite a lot in a short amount of time. But in that case, I'd just like to say before we finish up that you've gone through this experience where you're at a loss, you're seeking something different, you're desperate for a change, and then you become the victim of this bizarre multi-level marketing scheme that basically sets people up to fail. And you go through it for 2 years while staying in this job that had you seeking for something different in the first place. And you have your faith kind of pressured and twisted and distorted, and have all these weird kind of belief systems that are different to what you're used to with your own church beliefs put on you, and told to recruit people and bring them in so that they can experience the same thing. But then you've moved away from Amway. Your faith is stronger than it has been, and you're in a new job with a team that works really well for you. So you are an example of somebody who has gone through a multi-level marketing experience and come out of the other end and can look back on it and say, like, it's not right, there's something wrong, and people should be talking about it, and speaking out and making sure that everybody is aware that they just don't work. So that's my summary of the story that you've come here to tell us today. And I think it's great that you can sit there and tell us that although it was a difficult couple of years, you are in a much better place now. And I think that's the main and most important thing for listeners who are potentially in similar situations to take away from this. You know, there is the opportunity for you to walk away and make those changes to your life so that you can put yourself in a better place. Obviously, it was a few years ago now that you left, but you've been able to come here today and speak openly about your experiences and bring that awareness to other people. So thank you so much for your time, Chelsea. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Casey. It's great. Thank you so much for having me so I could speak about it, because yes, there absolutely is hope on the other side. It's not the end of everything if you leave.
Fantastic. Okay, brilliant, Chelsea. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
That is the end of this week's episode. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so by emailing me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker, Casey, and this has been the Cult Vault.